Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Denise Hurd, Director of Research for the U.S. Poultry and Egg Association. Today, I will be speaking with Dr. Pratima Adhikari regarding a layer nutrition research project, which she recently completed and was funded by U.S. Poultry and its foundation. Dr. Adhikari is an assistant professor in the Department of Poultry Science at Mississippi State University. Welcome, Dr. Adhikari, and thank you for agreeing to speak with us today.
Thanks, Denise. Good morning to you. It's a pleasure to talk about the completed research and where to go forward from here in the future, of course. And I also want to acknowledge U.S. Poultry and Egg Association for funding this project. Thanks.
Thank you. So to get started, the title of your completed study is Effect of Varying Protein Amino Acid Level of Diets with or Without Protease to Reduce Feed Cost, Improve Egg Quality, and Egg Solids in Post-Peak and Late Lay. Will you begin by giving us an overview of your project?
Sure. The overall goal of this project was to study how the role of protease enzyme just as a single component being added to the feed and how the different levels of amino acids, like 4 levels, starting all the way from your 100% breeder recommendation and going up to 85% recommendation, lower than the recommendation, and how they would interact and play a role on various parameters, such as one would be egg production. Of course, we always look that first. Egg quality, and under that, we were looking total egg solids, albumin weight, yolk weight, egg size, egg mass. And also, not to mention amino acid digestibility and also crude protein digestibility by feeding this protease. And the study was 40 weeks long, where the first 20 weeks was when the hens were right after the peak production from 30 to 50 weeks. Then another phase was continued from 50 to 70 weeks of age. So these hens were basically fed a very traditional commercial layer ration that was formulated on a base of corn, soybean meal, and DDGs. We had basically 2x4 factorial arrangement where we had like 2 levels, not 2 S or no, like inclusion of protease, and 4 levels of crude protein plus amino acids, where I already mentioned the levels going all the way from 100% to 85% with 5% difference, 100, 95, 90, and 85%. And this protease enzyme was based on Bacillus licheniformis bacteria, and it was added on top. We collected a couple of parameters here, of course, daily egg collection and counting. Then we also look into the feed conversion ratio. We weighed the hens at the beginning and the end of the study, and different egg parameters such as high unit, egg size, specific gravity, eggshell thickness, eggshell weight, and also we measure the cost analysis at the end of each phase. To collect and study the digestibility, we euthanized hens, certain numbers at the end of each phase, and then we looked into various either required or non-essential amino acids and their digestibility. And the bar that we used were Highline W36 white breed. So, just to give an overview of a result, it's very interesting that we did not see a main effect of protease as a single effect, but then it more interacted with the level of amino acid, and there was something going on. And I would love to describe that in your maybe next question, if you have.
Thank you. Thank you. So your initial goal for this project was to conduct a long-term study to investigate the feeding effect of protease along with various levels of crude protein and amino acids in layers feed. Please tell us what you learned.
Yeah, to summarize our result and what I learned from this study, what I know is in past few decades, there hasn't been a lot of research with the layers and the protease enzyme. Either this enzyme has been used as a component of a multi-enzyme where they would add a different carbohydrate degrading enzyme, and then this enzyme that breaks the makes the protein available from the feed, right? That's what protease does. But then this is an exciting study because we were looking, just the single effect of protease, and that was already a lot of learning for me, for us in this project. What we found though is this effect on the egg size, which we were really expecting to happen, was very less promising. So there might be other things to think about in the future, where to go from here. But we also saw, as I mentioned, some interaction effect of protease with some of the major amino acids, such as lysine, methionine, threonine, isoleucine, and valine. So that was exciting to see that kind of data. Although this study did not particularly show the effect of protease in reducing the egg size, it doesn't mean that the future studies will not be conducted that will maybe include a higher infusion dose of protease. That's what I learned from this project. And I feel like at least 2 levels maybe would have been tested, like either like lower, a company recommended level, lower than that, or maybe a standard level and maybe higher than that. So something to think about.
And during the course of the study, did you encounter any pitfalls? And if so, can you share what those were?
That's fine. As I mentioned, we did not see a huge effect of the proteases alone. The very interesting thing is, as the amino acid levels were decreased, the production was lower. Like, for example, in our that 85% level, the hen egg production was lower. So it may not be a good thing. Yes, we went that lower. We did it. I mean, there was not any mortality or any negative effect than that. But then the production wise, that was decreased, which is a loss for the egg industry. So, either with or without protease, with the lower level of amino acid, the production was lower, right? There was no any role that the protease would compensate for that lower level. Maybe that was one of the pitfall. And we also did not see major effect of protease on that albumin percentage composition, which I was hoping maybe if that would manipulate that composition, maybe the egg size control or the size of the egg would come into the role. We didn't see that. We also did not see effect of protease for the total solids or dry matter of the albumin and yolk, also the feed intake of this bird. I was at least wondering, and there might be some kind of benefit of protease, which did not happen.
Thank you. What would you say is the take-home message for anyone within the layer industry that is tuning in today?
Yeah, something to think here is maybe a future question for all of us. What might be the reason, like the other things that we might want to consider in our formulation of the diet? Yes, we have made the requirement, we have tried to make the requirement because our feed was formulated on the base of ideal protein concept, where we made the lysine as our primary amino acid, and we compare that each of these amino acids to lysine, which is no doubt whatever level it was fed, it was maintained, the ratio was maintained. But it's still something to think about is, again, what might the author expect of formulation or this kind of feeding. We have to think in the future. I mean, are we going to and try 85% lower recommendation? Is it too low to try? So something to think about. Maybe that's something we as a group can think.
Thank you. And another question similar to the last question is, what do you think is the overall impact of this project?
Yes, I can see that the effect of addition of as a single component enzyme has not been extensively studied, particularly with laying hens. Most of the time, protease has been a part of the multi-enzymes. Therefore, I was hoping we will at least get to know the role of this enzyme and if there would be any effects, what kind of effect that would be. Like, for example, we saw some effect of interaction between its crude protein and digestibility of amino acid. And also maybe to impact somewhere where we were using this Highline W36 breed, and there hasn't been any much of the work been done, at least not reported here. So maybe that's something, my research would be there as a part of the database, just to think about in the future.
Great. And are there other studies in the work?
Absolutely. There's always a follow-up, and we have learned a lot from this project. Me and my graduate students were working and drafting all the results, and we're ready to publish the two manuscript out of this. So in that, we have been discussing, a few things. But here, what I want to mention is one way I'm thinking is maybe explore more on the protease type side. I mean, this was a Bacillus licheniformis, as I already mentioned, but maybe there are other proteases, that would be maybe more effective to use it. Another would be, going into inclusion levels, even protease levels, different levels of protease to be included in our diet and looking into that comparison. And I want to explore more about, again, in the egg solids in the sizes and not compromising the production. That's something we can think about. And being a nutritionist, I always think about maybe formulation plays a lot of role, even though we did our best to, in this scenario, we are best to do a best formulation, but who knows? I mean, there might be other things to consider. That's all I think.
All right, well, thank you very much. And that was my last question. So great job. This was a project that's going to provide valuable information back to the layer industry. So congratulations on completing it. And also thank you very much for taking time out of your schedule to give us an update on your findings. And we look forward to the future studies that you just discussed.
Thank you very much, Dr. Har, for this interview and the opportunity that I can talk about my research. I always love to do that. And absolutely, again, thanks to US Poultry and Egg Foundation to support the young researcher like us to go forward.
Thank you.
Thanks.